Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike Kaprowski. I'm the National Campaign Director of Opportunity Starts at Home. And I have with me Chantel Wilkinson, who is the National Campaign Coordinator as well.
Hi.
So thanks for attending this webinar. I think you'll enjoy what we have planned for you today. We encourage live tweeting while we go through the webinar. You can follow us right now on Twitter. You should be able to see it up on your screen at @OpStartsAtHome. And you can see you can also see our hashtag as well, hashtag Opportunity Starts at Home. So if you feel compelled to live tweet during the webinar, please feel free to do so. And you will also see a hyperlink to our website as well, and you can check that out certainly after the webinar. So let's get going, and we'll show you our agenda for today's webinar. We have 5 big things to cover. First, we'll have Diane Yentel give us some welcoming remarks, and then we'll play an introductory video which tells you a little about the campaign. And then Chantel and I will lead you through Campaign 101. We are the 2 staff members of the campaign, and so we'll give you a comprehensive overview of what this campaign's about and who's on board and our structures and plans and policies that we're advocating for and our funding. And we'll have 2 guest speakers during this portion, Dan Hawkins and Greg Payne, who we'll introduce later. And then we'll end with perhaps the most important portion of all, which is how you can get involved in this campaign. And we have a range of options depending on your comfort level. And then we'll try to open it up for some Q&A. So with that, I'll turn it over to Diane Yentel. She's the President and CEO of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. Diane?
Great. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. So the National Low-Income Housing Coalition is a membership organization dedicated to achieving socially just public policy that ensures that the lowest income people have decent, safe, and affordable homes. And we work closely with members, partners, and allies across the country to achieve that goal. So we've had some significant success in this work over the years, but despite that, and despite our best efforts and the best efforts of many of our housing partners and allies across the country, the housing crisis itself has been intensifying in recent years, and it's most negatively impacting the lowest income people. So today we face a shortage nationally of over 7 million affordable homes that are available to the lowest income seniors, people with disabilities, families with kids, and others. So for every 100 of the lowest income people, there are just 35 homes affordable and available to them. This leaves the majority of the lowest income people paying far more for their rent than they can afford, driving them deeper into poverty. This is our core and very significant challenge. At the same time, we have before us a tremendous opportunity. So as the housing challenges across the country have grown, so too has a body of research making a very strong, compelling case for how central housing affordability is to the outcomes of so many other sectors. When people are affordably housed, they have better health, their kids do better in school, they have greater lifetime earnings, they even live longer. So given both the increasing need and this evidence of the importance of greater federal investments in housing solutions, we at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, together with this campaign's founding partners at the National Alliance to End Homelessness, Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, Children's Health Watch, and Make Room, we started asking ourselves and others a couple questions. We were asking, were leaders of non-housing sectors as convinced by the research as we are that they recognize that they won't be successful in reaching their long-term goals until more people are affordably housed? And we asked if, given that, would they be willing to join us in our advocacy for greater federal investments in housing solutions like rental assistance or greater investments in the National Housing Trust Fund and other deeply targeted supply programs? So we found, after asking these questions, that the answer is a very strong yes, and the result is the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign, which is made up of leaders in the health, education, anti-poverty, anti-hunger, civil rights, faith-based, and other communities. So Opportunity Starts at Home is about recognizing, right, how central housing is to the outcomes of all of these other sectors, and it's about combining our networks, our partners, our efforts to push the federal government to make the investments necessary to solve the affordable housing crisis. We can do this, right? As a country, we can choose to end homelessness and housing poverty. We have a clear understanding of the problem. We have the solutions, proven and effective programs to affordably house the lowest income people, and we have the resources. We can certainly afford to do this. We lack only the political will to fund the solutions at the scale necessary. So Opportunity Starts at Home is about building that political will and working with Congress to advance the solutions. So I'm so pleased that so many of you joined us today. I think we have over 1,000 people registered for this webinar. We're so glad that you joined us to learn more about the campaign and ways to get involved. And I know that many of you who are on the webinar today, maybe even most of you, are not coming from the housing field, which is just what we hoped for. So I want to welcome you all to the webinar, but even more importantly, to this work. We really look forward to the new partnerships that we'll build together and to the success that we'll achieve. So I'm going to turn it back now to Mike to take us through the next steps in the webinar.
Great, thanks Diane, that was great. So now we're going to show you a short video which features many of the senior leaders on the steering committee organizations, and they're going to talk about the importance of the campaign and why they joined. There's an important technical note on the video. When I start playing the video, the audio of the video is going to play through your computer's speakers. You won't hear the audio through the dial-in phone number. So for just this video portion, you'll need to listen to your computer speakers. So you might want to check the volume of those speakers. If worse comes to worse, if you can't get the audio for some reason, it's okay. It's 7 minutes, and then we'll be back to the regular presentation. So I am going to transition now to the video, and I will start playing it.
The affordable housing crisis has reached historic heights, most negatively impacting the lowest income people. Nationally, we have a shortage of over 7 million affordable homes available to the lowest income seniors, people with disabilities, and families with kids. So another way of looking at that is for every 100 of the lowest income families, there are just 35 homes affordable and available to them. This leaves the majority of the lowest income people paying far more for their rent than they can afford, driving them deeper into poverty.
Federal housing policies can play a big role in helping this crisis, but federal housing assistance is chronically underfunded and currently faces unprecedented threats. Only 1 out of 4 families that qualify for federal housing assistance will actually get help, and this is unacceptable, especially considering the clear evidence that housing is pivotal in many areas. Housing touches virtually every aspect of life. And despite the magnitude of the problem, it is not yet a national priority. So the idea behind the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign is that various sectors are going to have to come together to push for federal policies that protect and expand affordable housing. This work cannot be done by housing advocates alone.
That's why we need and are launching this new campaign. We need something beyond what's been done in the past. We need a broader-based campaign. We need leaders, people who are active in a broad array of endeavors, from healthcare to jobs to employment to community development. We need people across the political spectrum, and they need to come together and really help the public get a deeper understanding of the severity of the problem and why it should be elevated, in my view, as a national priority. And in doing that, to help motivate policymakers to step up to the plate and take the stronger actions that are needed.
We decided to join the multi-sector housing campaign because we recognize that there are so many issues that affect the health of individuals that we simply can't isolate ourselves in the stovepipe of healthcare alone. It is affected by and it affects so many other aspects of people's lives: education, income, environment, and so many other factors. And housing is one of the most important. Unless we step up and do it, we in the health community step up and join that effort, we're derelict ourselves. If we just simply concentrate only on the medical and healthcare side of things, we're losing both the opportunity and we're facing the danger of not succeeding. At which point, in healthcare, all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on a problem that requires so much more.
Housing is a critical part of the civil rights advocacy work. And so our goal as an organization is to reduce residential segregation wherever it exists. That's why it's necessary to have a federal policy landscape. We need a federal policy landscape to affirmatively enforce fair housing in a way in which all citizens are experiencing equal protection under the law, and we remove people from under the specter of social immobility. One's zip code should not determine their life's future. But racial inequities show up in all facets of life, and you cannot address inequities if you're not dealing with housing.
The Children's Defense Fund decided to be a part of the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign and project because we believe in ending child poverty, and we believe that this campaign will have a tremendous boost in increasing access to housing for children and families across America. And without that access, we don't believe that we can really address child poverty. This is not just about housing, it is about income inequality, it's about racial disparities, and it is about the future of America and whether or not all children have equal opportunity to advance their futures.
Housing is crucially important to our sector of work. We're an anti-hunger organization, and when people can't afford their housing, that means that they can't afford adequate food. When rent's too high and they have to pay rent, they don't buy enough food, or if they're buying enough food, they fall behind on rent and they're going to be evicted.
I taught for years at a place where kids felt lucky that they were able to move out of their cars. I remember one of my students came back after getting into affordable housing, and his mom brought him back so that I could, just give him a hug, and he was so excited. He says, "There's grass, there's grass in front of our house," because he was used to a sidewalk. He was used to sleeping on the street. That means that little boy is going to be able to concentrate on his homework. He's going to be able to participate in class. He'll be singing his ABCs. They're better students. They're going to achieve more. That home is the center of their universe.
People who are housed are not homeless. We know we're going to need to solve the housing affordability crisis if we're going to end homelessness in our nation.
The Opportunity Starts at Home campaign has brought together some of the leading national organizations in many sectors. Organizations that are ready to combine voices and expertise. The campaign was founded by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, National Alliance to End Homelessness, Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, Make Room, and Children's Health Watch, along with a steering committee including Catholic Charities USA, Children's Defense Fund, Community Catalyst, Food Research and Action Center, NAACP, National Alliance on Mental Illness, National Association of Community Health Centers, National Education Association, and Unidos US.
Safe, decent, affordable homes are a foundation for opportunity. Every organization on the steering committee that's joined this campaign understands how central housing affordability is to them achieving their goals.
No one organization can hold the magic wand to a solution. All of us bring value and voice to the table.
We believe in the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign because it is a multi-sector campaign. You cannot solve affordable housing without bringing in education and child welfare and healthcare access and child advocates, because we're all impacted by the crisis of affordable housing in America.
To learn more about the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign and ways you can take action, please visit our website at opportunityhome.org.
Okay, we're back. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. And let me get back to the next slide. So Diane mentioned this, but this is, a multi-sector campaign, and we were really hoping for a multi-sector webinar audience today, and we definitely got it. We're so pleased with the diversity of the audience. We had about 1,000 registrants, really multi-sector from every corner of the country, a wide array of public and private organizations at the local, state, and federal levels. We saw folks register from organizations such as the Bipartisan Policy Center, Salvation Army, Texas Council on Family Violence, Brookings, several health insurance companies, hospital organizations, Legal Aid, Center for Disease Control, the National Congress of American Indians. So it's really exciting that we're all here today, ready to talk about an issue which affects all of our sectors, and that is the question of whether people have access to safe, decent, and affordable housing. This is a long-term campaign. There's no end date to it. We want to build a broad movement to generate widespread support for federal policies that expand affordable housing for low-income people. And, affordable housing campaigns are not new, of course, but what's unprecedented and what we think is transformative about this campaign is the scope and the diversity of the voices that we're bringing to the table to advocate. And it's happening at a really critical time in our country. So first, and we'll get more into this later, but our housing affordability crisis has reached disastrous levels, and it's hurting the lowest income people the worst. Incomes are stagnant, rents are increasing. Second, the housing community is increasingly realizing that we need help in making the case to the public and the policymakers for greater investments in affordable housing. We need far more ambitious solutions to solve this problem. And third, at the same time, there's this growing recognition in other sectors, whether it's education or healthcare, that they can't fully accomplish their own goals if the people they serve don't have access to good affordable housing. And there's been recent research over the past couple of years that has helped raise this awareness. You could think to the Raj Chetty groundbreaking research showing how housing and place are foundational to achieving the American dream. And so all of this is coming together, and this is really about educating the public and opinion leaders and policymakers so that we can advance stronger affordable housing policies at the federal level, and we're going to leverage the capacity of all the partners that are on board with this effort. As the video showed, we've put together a steering committee of the leading national organizations from an array of sectors. These steering committee organizations, they're all in. They're heavily involved in the campaign. They help us manage our strategies and our tactics and our priorities. You saw them on the video, but there's a recent addition as of today, the National League of Cities will be formally joining the steering committee as of today. It'll be the 15th organization. You can actually check out their website for the announcement, nlc.org, and they're going to help us get their member cities engaged more directly on federal housing policy. So when you look at this screen, the first thing you notice is that though this is a housing campaign, most of the organizations on the screen are not housing organizations. That's what makes this so unique and powerful, that they're all coming together to advocate for federal housing policies. That's a big deal because what it means is that elected officials and policymakers, they're not just going to be hearing from the same housing organizations that they've always heard from. They're also going to be hearing from doctors and educators and civil rights advocates and mental health professionals and anti-hunger advocates and faith-based leaders and more. This is our theory of change. The broader the movement, the better our chances for real policy change. We're still thinking about ways to further build out the steering committee. There are some sectors whose perspective we want to be a part of this campaign, and they're not on the steering committee yet: LGBTQ, seniors, veterans. We don't want the steering committee to get too big, but there are a few remaining seats for sectors that are missing. So with that, I'd like to have Dan Hawkins say a few words. He represents the National Association of Community Health Centers, and NAC is on the campaign steering committee. He's a senior VP at NAC. And Dan, we'd love to hear more about why NAC joined the campaign and why you think this issue needs to be tackled in a multi-sector way. So I'm going to take you off mute, and hopefully we can hear you. Dan, are you there?
I am here, as a matter of fact, Mike, and thank you. And welcome everyone to this very important webinar, and I welcome you especially as we celebrate National Health Center Week this week. Across the country, events being planned and going on in communities in every single state and territory, and NAC is proud to be a partner in this multi-sector campaign to improve affordable housing. You know, community health centers across the country provide high-quality medical, dental, and behavioral health care to more than 28 million Americans in more than 11,000 low-income communities across the country. 70% of their patients are poor, and by the way, 1.3 million are members of homeless families. Our health centers across the country have seen pretty clearly the effect that housing insecurity and homelessness have on the health and well-being of those who we serve. Uncertain and unstable work and school opportunities, increased anxiety, difficulty staying warm and safe from harm, and the near impossibility to keep, store, and use vital medications, and the like. The rest of the healthcare system, by the way, appears to be finally coming around to the recognition that a much broader focus on what we call the social determinants of health is vital to the success of the healthcare system to markedly increase health and dramatically lower all overall costs. As a matter of fact, in 2016, the Department of Health and Human Services, that's the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, released its latest Healthy People report with a groundbreaking new focus. For the first time, Healthy People 2020 plan emphasized the need to consider factors such as poverty, housing adequacy, education, nutrition, employment, and numerous aspects of the social structure that not only influence the health of populations, but also limit the ability of many to achieve health equity. Low-income families and communities of color experience these social determinants disproportionately. Using a social determinants approach can reframe the way public policy makers and the private sector think about achieving and sustaining health. And so there are three reasons why these social determinants matter. First, mainstream healthcare typically focuses on individual risk factors, health conditions, and disease. I've got high blood pressure, so that's just one example, which ignores the symptoms associated with social ecological causes or risks. Also, to truly affect change on poor health outcomes, high healthcare costs, and health disparities, especially among vulnerable populations, care must focus on the conditions that individuals and whole communities face each and every day, which directly affect the health and well-being of all in the community, and that includes housing adequacy. And finally, to effectively meet communities' and individuals' needs, healthcare needs to be integrated and coordinated through partnerships with public health and social service organizations. For all of these key reasons, health centers have joined the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign, which is fighting for better and more affordable housing for America's poor and low-income people. We stand foursquare with our partners in this campaign and are proud to work alongside them to improve the stock of affordable and available quality housing for all of America. Back to you, Mike.
Great, thanks, Dan. Really appreciate that. Excellent job in describing these inextricable connections. So with that, I want to move to the next portion of the presentation. And as I mentioned earlier, this campaign is launching at a time when our country's rental affordability crisis has reached severe heights. And so this is an interactive portion of the webinar. We're going to test you. We're going to test the audience through an interactive poll. And we're going to ask you some questions about rental affordability in America. And each one of you will get to vote for what you think is the right answer. So get ready to answer the next couple of questions, and we'll see how many of you get it right. We can't tell who voted for what, so it's totally anonymous. No harm, no foul. Give it a shot. So give me a few seconds here to get the poll launched. Okay, the poll should be open. You should be seeing it on your screen. So the first question is, nearly blank of all renters in America can't afford rent. So is it 1/5 of all renters in America that can't afford rent? 1/4, half, 2/3, or 3/4? So we're going to give you the next few seconds to fill out what you think is the right answer. Okay, more than half of you have already voted. That's good. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay. So let's see. So most of you, well, the numbers are changing. It's close. It's a close horse race, but most of you have said half of all renters in America cannot afford the rent. 33% of you said half, 25% of you said 1/4, 31% of you said 2/3. The answer is half. Half of all renters in America cannot afford the rent. This is a widespread problem. So I'm going to close that poll, and then I'm going to open up the second question. So it's a widespread problem, but it's hitting the lowest income people the hardest. And so the next question is, what percent of extremely low income renters are paying more than half of their income toward housing? And you can see the selections there. Please go ahead and cast your vote. Okay. 75% of you have voted, so that's pretty good. Okay, the answer, this is a smart crowd. 44% of you, the plurality of you, said that the answer is 71%. That is the correct answer. 71% of extremely low income renters are paying more than half of their income toward housing. It's an already small paycheck, and over half of it goes toward housing. You can imagine what that does to a family. I'm going to close that poll. The next question. There are 3,000 counties in the U.S. There are blank where a full-time minimum wage worker can afford a one-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. So there's 3,000 counties in the U.S. In how many counties can a full-time minimum wage worker afford a one-bedroom apartment at fair market rent? All right, give you a few more seconds. It's a tight one. All right. So 75% of you have casted a vote. It's a pretty close tie, but the plurality of you said 22 counties. That is the correct answer. So 38% of you said 22 counties, but 33% of you said 114 counties. The correct answer is 22 counties. That is correct. So basically, in less than 1% of counties in America can a full-time minimum wage worker afford a one-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. Okay, last question. And this kind of gives you some historical context. Since 1960, renters' incomes have gone up 5%. Rents have gone up by what percent? Cast your votes. Okay, 75% of you have casted a vote. So I thought we were going to have a flawless test here, but we did, as an audience, we did get this one wrong. So half of you, 50% of you said it was 114%. It's actually lower than that, but still a very high number. It is 61%. 21% of you said 61%. So not quite 114%, but probably in some areas of the country it has. But as a national average, it's gone up 61%, and incomes have gone up 5%. All right, so there goes the polls. Hopefully that was illuminating to you in terms of how widespread the problem actually is. So you can see the problem's severe. So together, all of these voices are going to come together through this campaign, and we're going to advocate for more robust and equitable federal housing policies. So the federal housing assistance, for those that don't know, is chronically underfunded. Today, only 1 out of 4 families that are eligible for housing assistance will actually get that assistance. And we really need to change that. But the reality is that housing, particularly the issue of rental affordability, does not reach national visibility. It's never really been a national priority. It's an issue sometimes in local and state campaigns, but almost never in a presidential campaign or a congressional campaign. You might have heard it in passing, but you would be really hard-pressed to think of a time when rental affordability garnered consistent national attention or was elevated as a top-tier priority in a presidential or congressional campaign. We've never made it a national priority, and it shows in the crisis that we're facing, right? It shows in those poll numbers that we just did. The reality is that federal involvement here is indispensable. States and localities simply cannot fix this on their own. So our long-term goal is ambitious, but we think achievable, and that is through more robust and equitable federal housing policies, we will end homelessness and ensure that the most vulnerable low-income households can afford the rent. I won't get too much into the numbers, but there's roughly 500,000 experiencing homelessness at a given time. There's 9.7 million extremely low-income households that can't afford rent. It's important to remember that these staggering numbers are the result of political choices. We have the ability to end this in our nation. We've politically chosen not to. And so we're going to pursue 3 main policy strategies to accomplish our goal. First, we need a major expansion of rental assistance to bridge the gap between income and rent. Rental assistance is too scarce. Like I said, only 1 out of 4 eligible will get it. Rental assistance, it could include an expansion of vouchers or maybe creating a new renter's tax credit, which actually both Senator Kamala Harris and Senator Cory Booker have recently proposed. These rental assistance solutions have to be ambitious and scaled to meet the large need across the nation. Second, we need to address the supply side of the problem. We have to increase the stock of deeply affordable housing, especially in markets where existing vacancies are scarce. And when I say deeply affordable housing, I mean housing that's affordable for those with the lowest incomes. And here, we're really going to be advocating for a major expansion of the National Housing Trust Fund, which is a dedicated funding stream to build and rehab and preserve and operate rental housing for extremely low-income people. The National Housing Trust Fund does exist today, but it is severely underfunded. We're also going to have to make sure that the existing tools that already produce affordable housing, such as the low-income housing tax credits, that they're working for the lowest income households. And we also need to make sure that we're preserving the stock that already exists. And then the third policy strategy for us, there's not currently a federal policy landscape around it. It would be the creation of an emergency assistance fund to stabilize households and prevent them from falling into housing instability, eviction, even homelessness. The idea is that temporary assistance can stabilize households that are experiencing major economic shocks before it leads to situations that require more prolonged and extensive housing assistance later on. So we all know this, right? In today's America, there's countless households that are one crisis away from a major economic shock that could easily spiral out of control, whether it's a broken down car, an overdue bill, job loss. The idea here is that this is a temporary cushion so that they can stabilize. And that means financial assistance to cover the gap between income and rent when these folks are in a crisis, as well as potentially providing them with housing stability services, whether it's counselors or legal services. If you look at the federal, state, and local efforts like this, it's really an uneven patchwork of support. We need a more coherent and energetic approach at the federal level. This is about catching people early in a crisis and stabilizing them before it spirals. So in the coming months, the campaign is going to be issuing a report on this policy agenda, and so please stay tuned for more on this. Our thinking is that if we can advance these policy solutions, we know it will improve outcomes beyond housing alone. This campaign is not just about fixing housing. It's bigger than that. This is about opportunity, economic mobility, educational attainment, healthy living, civil rights. Housing influences outcomes across many sectors, and the research is pretty clear on that. So this crisis that we just walked through, it shouldn't just matter to housing advocates, it should matter to everybody, because housing impacts pretty much every outcome that matters to our country. You know, as you saw in the video, it's foundational in terms of education. Richard Rothstein, a scholar on housing and education, he puts it this way: school reform cannot succeed without housing reform. We know, as Dan Hawkins said, it's connected to health. A quality, affordable home is a prescription for good health. It's linked to the prevention of long-term health problems. It promotes healthy, productive lives. It's connected to civil rights. Derek Johnson of the NAACP said it really well in the video. We can't fully tackle racial and socioeconomic inequities if we're not dealing with massive housing disparities and pervasive housing segregation. It's connected to economic mobility. We know through research that when people live in homes they can afford, in safe neighborhoods with quality schools, their kids are more likely to go to college and climb up the income ladder as adults. Affordable housing is one of the most powerful anti-poverty tools that we have. It's connected to economic productivity and growth. We know that investments in affordable housing are a proven catalyst for job creation. Criminal justice. We know through research that individuals that transition out of the criminal justice system who find a stable, affordable home, they're less likely to go back to jail than those who don't. Veterans are at a heightened risk of homelessness. They need access to good, affordable housing so that they can thrive and succeed in the very neighborhoods they swore to defend. Hunger. It's simple, right? When rent eats up your hard-earned paycheck, families have less disposable income to buy enough nutritious food. So on our website, when you go to it, we have a page for each one of these sectors, right? It's one thing to say, well, you know, housing touches everything, but there is substantial empirical evidence to back this up. We have fact sheets where we outline the landmark research that shows how housing is connected. You'll see the numbers, the costs, the infographics. This research goes back many decades. It shows how important housing is to improving outcomes in all these other sectors. So that's why we've put together these sector pages. We've gotten really good feedback about them thus far, so please check them out. And maybe in the future we'll do a webinar where we kind of do a deep dive into each one of these particular sectors. So I'm going to turn it over to Chantel now to go through the next few slides.
Thanks, Mike. The growing recognition of the impact of housing also reaches the world of philanthropy. You've seen the steering committee, a fully multi-sector collaboration. The campaign's funders are joined in a new collaboration of 9 of the nation's largest foundations called the Funders for Housing and Opportunity. They've pledged $2.7 million over the next 3 years. We are so grateful for their support, and it's a statement in and of itself that these leading foundations are supporting this type of multi-sector work. We've taken a big portion of those dollars and invested them in 7 state campaigns in California, Idaho, Maine, New Jersey, Ohio, Oregon, and Utah. These capacity building grants support the building of multi-sector coalitions at the state level and the influencing of key federal policymakers from their states. We want to scale this type of work to reach all 50 states eventually. To help you get a sense of how these multi-sector campaigns are playing at the state level, I'd like to introduce you to Greg Payne, who's the director of the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition. His org is one of our grantees, and he will talk through their efforts in Maine as a part of the OSA campaign. Greg?
Great, thanks, Chantel. Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Payne, and I'm currently serving as the chairman of the board of the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and also the director of the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition. As Chantel mentioned, we are one of the sub-grantees of the Opportunity Starts at Home initiative. So I am just going to give you a quick overview of what's happening here and how we're trying to take a new multi-sector approach to our advocacy. I'd say that much of our federal budget work here in recent years has really centered on Senator Collins, particularly given her leadership role on the THUD subcommittee of appropriations. After the 2016 election, though, when it became clear that this administration and this Congress intended to really decimate housing programs, we came to two conclusions. One, that the more existential fight for these programs was going to be happening at a higher level than the Transportation HUD subcommittee. So keeping the conversation down at that level was really not sufficient. And two, the only way that we as housers were going to be able to engage in that higher level budget discussion and have a real chance of growing Senator Collins' resolve in particular to protect housing programs was to join together with other groups across the state that were reckoning with their own existential threats in their sectors. So last summer, we began reaching out to some of those other sectors: public health, environmental protection, child welfare, fisheries, seniors, community development, and others. And we asked them if they agreed that we all had a much better chance of strengthening her position in particular, given her outsized influence on the process, if we spoke with a common voice. And the vast majority of those groups readily agreed, and we started working together, started by putting together a large sign-on letter from our partners and our respective members to our congressional delegation, and a representative group went and delivered it in person to Senator Collins' office in Portland and talked with her legislative director about our common concerns. That meeting went really well. It was a great success. It clearly left an impression on Senator Collins' staff that we had all these groups from all these different sectors talking with a common message, and that was obviously unusual for them. And it also grew our own enthusiasm to make this cross-sector collaboration sustainable over the long term. Fortunately, right around this same time is when the Opportunity Starts at Home grant became final and the sub-grants became available. The sub-grant that came to Maine has allowed us to hire staff and to move forward with some of the foundational pieces that are necessary, we believe, to start with first. So we've agreed on a name. Our new organization is called Maine Together. We went and got help getting a logo. We've agreed on a governance structure and a meeting schedule. We've created a website, a Twitter handle, and we've adopted a vision statement and some principles of membership. And so now we have a couple dozen groups or so, statewide organizations from a wide array of sectors that are participating in this effort. And now that most of those foundational pieces are established at this point, we can start focusing on a work plan for proactively supporting domestic programs like affordable housing programs that our members see as so critical to Maine people. So that's what's next, along with obviously continuing to find other groups not represented who should be part of Maine Together. We see the FY20 budget as the looming fight that we expect to be actively engaged in and working with our delegation on. And I guess as I end, I just want to emphasize again that how grateful we are to the funders who came together to make this possible, because honestly, without the sub-grant that's coming to us, this would not be sustainable. And so we're very excited, and we're looking forward to what comes next and using the amplified voice that we're creating here.
Thanks, Greg. Just give us a minute to get to the next slide. Yeah. So to give you all a sense of where we are in the life of this campaign, we've described our current work in year one and our intent for the out years. We launched in March of this year, so we're fairly new and have focused on building the infrastructure of the campaign in year one. We've hired staff, operationalized a steering committee, built a website, newsletter, and multi-sector content. We've built a social media presence. We provide support to the state campaigns, and we've put in place some key action items such as letters to Congress. We've already sent over 600 letters to Congress through our advocates, and we're gearing up for more efforts as we speak. As we mentioned earlier, we continue to work through our policy agenda, which we hope to publish soon. We're establishing the Opportunity Roundtable, which we'll discuss in the next slide. And we've hosted a few publicly visible actions and events, such as today, to raise continued awareness. In the out years, we seek to really activate the campaign with the infrastructure we built in year one and build visibility and commitment. This means advancing the policy agenda through robust advocacy and continuing to expand the network at national and state levels. We hope that in the years to come, we have one or more major galvanizing events like a national town hall meeting. Now I'll turn it back to Mike to let you know how you can get involved with the campaign.
All right, thanks, Chantel. So before we open it up for some Q&A, I want to talk about how you can get involved in this campaign. I presume that's why many of you registered for this webinar, and hopefully there are many of you that are eager to get involved in some way. So let's go through some of the options here. Some of them are lighter engagements, some of them are heavier engagements. It's really whatever you're comfortable with. So the first thing to do, if you haven't already, is engage the website, opportunityhome.org. It's mobile friendly. Almost everything you need to know about the campaign is on this website. We've been really intentional about putting everything on the website. So on the website, you'll find videos with leaders from the steering committee. There's some Q&A format videos. There's some animated tutorials about how housing policy impacts other sectors. There's an About Us section. If you're looking to get involved in the advocacy stuff, there's an entire Take Action section. You can share your story with us, help us recruit non-housing organizations. Most prominently in that Take Action section, you can actually send letters to Congress directly through our website. You can spread the word to your networks, urging them to send our letters to Congress. So spread the word. Let folks know that these letters are available with the click of a button. We have two that are on the website right now. One is kind of a broad letter, which urges federal action on affordable housing generally. The other is a more specific letter about a Senate bill, which was recently proposed, and it would create a bipartisan affordable housing task force to better understand and respond to the crisis. And we think that this would be a momentous step for Congress to actually do this. Next, let me find the button. You can simply sign up for our monthly e-newsletter to get our regular updates. This is a really easy lift. Everybody can sign up for our newsletter. It's right on the homepage if you scroll all the way down. It's the easiest way to stay updated. Also, spread the word to your networks. Get them to sign up as well. As I mentioned earlier, you can also sign up for, or check out, not sign up for, but check out our sector pages that I mentioned earlier, where you can read all this landmark research and make the case to your colleagues that, hey, whatever issue they care about, housing is likely connected to it. So print off, there's downloadable fact sheets. You can print them off. You can leave them on your boss's desk after hours so that they get it in the morning. And use this information to take a multi-sector perspective in your own advocacy and in your own decision making. You can read blogs and op-eds that have been written by our partners. You can subscribe to our new podcast on iTunes, where we'll take deep dives. We do some deep dives with leading experts in the field to talk about the intersections of housing and other sectors. We talk to leaders in the healthcare fields, the education fields, civil rights, faith-based organizations. We've published 5 episodes thus far, and we've had about 1,000 listens. So please check it out. It's on our homepage. You can also go into iTunes and search for Opportunity Starts at Home. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at OpStartsAtHome. Tweet, retweet. We're pretty active on Twitter. And then finally, this one, I want to caveat this one because this won't apply to everyone on the webinar. It only applies to organizations that have a national focus. So we've created this opportunity roundtable for national organizations to join. It's different from the steering committee. Think of it as our big table. Basically, the roundtable will have many more organizations on it than the steering committee. We've actually had 60 organizations already commit to the roundtable. Organizations like the AARP, the American Psychological Association, Center for American Progress, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the Human Rights Campaign, Unity Healthcare, Meals on Wheels America. This is really designed for housing and non-housing organizations. The invite is open. And again, it's different from the steering committee. It's a much lighter commitment than the steering committee. So for national organizations that join the roundtable, you're not endorsing the campaign or its explicit policy goals. You're just simply saying that you want to engage in cross-sector dialogue about the intersections of housing and all these other sectors. We'll have about 3 in-person meetings per year in DC. Our inaugural meeting is next month, actually, and then in between the meetings, you really have a choice for how much you want to engage with the campaign. You can do lighter engagements, heavier engagements. We'll have a menu of options that you can choose from. It's structured very flexibly. So bottom line is, if you're a nationally focused organization that might be interested in participating on the roundtable, you can email me directly. My email will appear on the next slide. But just, I'll leave you with a general note here. Just generally let us know how we can help you, right? I mean, there might be an event that you're putting on sometime soon where you think that we might add value. Let us know. Maybe we could provide some materials to you, some fact sheets, point you in the right direction. Let us know how we can help you, because this is, like we said, is going to require a broad movement to advance federal policies that expand affordable housing. So that is the conclusion. There's my email, as I mentioned, and there's Chantel's email as well. So again, just shoot us an email. We're pretty good about responding. Let us know how we can help you. Okay, so that is the conclusion of the formal presentation. Ran a little bit longer, but that's okay. We have about 5 minutes left for some quick Q&A. And let me caveat this by saying we'll do an FAQ and we'll send it out to everybody who registered. So we've had a good handful of questions that have been submitted thus far. We're not going to be able to get through all of those in 5 minutes. So we'll do an FAQ and we'll send it back out to the full group, so that if I don't answer your question here in the next 5 minutes, we'll get to it for sure. A quick question that I can answer easily, I saw it a couple times. Folks asked whether we could provide the link to the video that we showed. Yes, it's actually embedded on our homepage. So you can just go to opportunityhome.org and you can watch the video right from the website. And if you actually click on it, it will take you to Vimeo. It's not on YouTube, it's on Vimeo, but that'll give you the direct link to it as well. So check that out. We've also been kind of monitoring questions throughout the presentation, and there's a common theme, a common thematic question, which is, have you considered this type of group for the steering committee? Some of you mentioned a national domestic violence organization. Some of you mentioned small business organizations. And we get this question a lot, and it's great feedback, and it's a great question. And yes, I mean, we talk about a lot of sectors that we would like to have on the steering committee. There are so many potential perspectives that we'd really love to have on the steering committee, and quite frankly, we're still trying to figure out who those remaining sectors are where we really need that voice at the table. So we don't pretend to have all the answers there. So we actually welcome your feedback. And again, our emails are right there. So if there's a particular organization that you think makes sense for us to reach out to, let us know. We're all ears, because we recognize that there's a lot of perspectives that matter in this space. And as we consider building out the few remaining seats on the steering committee, those pieces of input are going to be really, really valuable to us. Let's see. There was a question around what do the steering committee organizations do? And I think I know where this question is going. Oftentimes you see a piece of paper and there's lots of logos on it, and the question is, well, okay, what are they actually doing? So let me try to describe to you what the steering committee organizations actually do in this campaign. These are the 15 organizations that I said are all in. We have quarterly meetings that they attend. They attend our, the campaign's public events. They really provide ongoing strategic and tactical guidance to Chantel and I, both during the meetings and really on an as-needed basis. They will all tell you that we email them on a very regular basis asking for their input on planning and campaign infrastructure and recruiting new partners and all of that sort of stuff. They also assist us with drafting and reviewing the content. So, when we were building the health and housing page on our website, Children's Health Watch and several of the other healthcare organizations on the steering committee were really instrumental in helping us develop that content, making sure that we were citing the most landmark research, making sure that we were framing the language in a way that would resonate within the healthcare sector, et cetera, et cetera. They contribute original content to the campaign. So they will write blogs for our website. They'll, as you saw, they'll show up for videos and go on camera talking about the importance of the campaign. One activity that we're really deep in right now is the steering committee is going to assist us with the development of the policy agenda, the national policy agenda, and really fleshing that out for that formal report that we publish. And then perhaps the most important of all is that they spread the campaign's messages. They are our tentacles into their particular sectors. So they mobilize their sectors around certain actions, whether it's register for this webinar, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter, or spread this letter to Congress. And so they are our reach into those particular sectors, and that's, I think, critically important. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And so I saw an earlier question around somebody had a conversation with their congressional representative who said that this problem is primarily a local problem. And quite frankly, this is a common refrain about the affordable housing crisis, that it's inherently a state and local problem, and that the federal government can't do much about it. We would push back on that notion very much. When the problem hits every corner of the country, it's a national problem. And I think some of the poll questions get at this, but there's a lot more research on our website that show that this isn't just a New York City and a San Francisco problem. This is a problem in suburban areas. It's a problem in rural areas. This is truly hitting every corner of the country. And so it is a national problem, and it requires a national purview. And so what I would urge you to do is kind of share the research about how pervasive this problem is. It's not isolated to just, the big cities. And the problem has been growing, as one of the poll questions said, since 1960. Rents have gone up by 5%, incomes have gone up by 5%, and rents have gone up by 61%. This problem has been getting severe and continues to get more severe. And states and localities don't have the resources to handle this on their own. They're an important piece of the puzzle, of course, but they're not going to be able to do it without more robust federal action. And then I would also point to the history of this, that the federal government has never really had a coordinated plan to provide affordable housing for those with the lowest incomes. If you look at the history of federal involvement in housing policy, it's a history of scattershot investments and disinvestment at times. And so we really think that this crisis demands more robust federal action, and we think it's very much should be on a top priority for congressional leaders and other national leaders. So that concludes. That's all we have time for. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I know there were several questions that we weren't able to get through, but we will, as I said, we'll put together an FAQ and send it back out to everybody in case we didn't get to your question. So I just want to end by really thanking everybody for coming to the webinar. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your votes. Thanks for watching the video. This is about building a broad movement, and we need each and every one of you on board and helping us with the cause. So again, you see our emails up on the screen. If there's any way that we can support you or help you, if you have any questions, whether it's about the roundtable or where do I find this fact sheet or where's the video, email us directly and we'll give you a response. So thanks again, everybody, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.